Good afternoon, my dear. Thank you for joining me, especially after such a long day at school. I know that you're not usually all that interested in this sort of inquiry and investigation, really, but nonetheless, your presence is appreciated. Not to mention necessary, given the subject matter that we'll be discussing on this fine day will be pertaining to, well, you. You and anybody you can think of who might be able to find themselves filled with affection on your behalf. I don't think it's an impossible thing to do, to love you. You're a hard person to dislike in the first place, after all. The question we're asking, the hypothesis we're forming, isn't necessarily how somebody could love you, but how they love you, and how their affections could manifest in the future. We've established the idea that this is an individual that you're most likely closer to than distant from, as well as being somebody who could slip into your house at a moment's notice. Of course, there's always a chance that my assertions could be wrong, but this is the assumption that we are running on at this point in time, and until proven wrong in a more daring fashion than it has been, we will continue with this thought process. Now, before we begin analyzing the letter and its contents, do you have any questions about anything? My research, Why is this of such import to me? You are my friend, are you not? The closest one I have. Is it so wrong for me to want to contend in short order with the individual who might wish to win your heart? Is it so wrong that I want to see you happy and safe, with somebody whose first priority is keeping you happy and safe? You are my closest friend. You're the only person I know who's willing to listen to my incessant rattling and prattling, put up with my investigation in the name of scientific curiosity, but I am aware that I do not necessarily deserve the same label. You're kind and you are sociable, and people look at you differently than they do me, and they look at you differently when they see you with me. Unless you mote it be, unless you let it be so, I cannot claim you as mine and mine alone. And does the dove not deserve a chance to fly before its wings are pinioned with green gold? If you truly care for me as much as you've implied that you do, I know I'll see you return to me one day. But I want to make sure that the individuals who you let feed you at the simple gesture of the hand do not clip your wings in your prime. It's all I can ask of you to let me do. It's all I can ask, for the sake of your own protection. You have helped me. You have helped me time and time again, over and over again. And all I've done to repay your kindness is hang over you like a shroud, a bad omen, something of the most unfortunate apparition you can take a gander at. Let me help you in the only way I know how, through research, through analysis, through the closest word I have for... Please excuse me, my dear. I must have forgotten myself along the line. After all, this is an investigation for the sake of your interests, not an analysis or an investigation of my own mixed feelings. Let's begin our investigation. Now, have you read the letter yet? All right, I can work with that. I needed to know in case there was an implicit bias that could come from being familiar with the phrases used within the text. Some writers have particular words or phrases that they like to use, and they can sound different in speech than they do in writing, but they still transfer just based on how an author writes and the style in which they do so. For instance, my speech is rather formal for the sake of being polite, and I refer to you as my dear, Not necessarily because I lie any claim over you, but simply because you are dear to me. Okay, we don't need an explanation for everything necessarily. It's just that if I didn't know any better, I'd say that you enjoyed listening to me talk. And is it so wrong to find that idea absurd after it all? Now, the text is handwritten. Looks to be done with a fancy sort of ballpoint pen based on how the ink is controlled on the paper, but still has the tendency to splash in places where the most weight in the letter would be pressed on it. And based on the way it curves, I'd say that was written with the left hand. The cursive is a little hard to read, but then again, when is left-handed cursive not? Ooh, here's something interesting. It seems that the writer might not be writing with their dominant hand based on the way the letters seem to curve and run into each other. The text is kind of stilted like that, phrased carefully, but still stunted. Isn't that interesting? That means this note could have only been written by somebody who's either right-handed and trying to master their handwriting, relearning to write with their left hand after a traumatic sort of injury, or somebody who's ambidextrous. Well, I suppose I'm ambidextrous, sure, but I'm learning. There's a difference. Do you really think I'd hand the love of my life a letter that looks like it was written by a 5-year-old for the sake of keeping them off my trail? Well, if I'm handing them a love letter at all, they better be the love of my life. Whoever wrote this isn't even that embarrassed about their affections for you, and yet I would still sooner walk off the edge of a cliff than write something as sentimental as this. Besides, sentiment should be ephemeral. Immortalized affection is all fine and good, but the sweetest sentiment should be snapshots that flow through the river of time as nothing more than a few grains of sand. It would go completely against all I stand for to be the one who penned this note, in addition to insinuating a lot about our relationship in a simple phrase. Though, you do keep asking. Are you trying to tell me something, my dear? Forgive me my insinuations. You can be so funny sometimes. I just can't help to push some of those buttons. The note is insultingly schmaltzy. I don't think you have anything to worry about. I mean, beyond some hapless little puppy of a lover tailing behind you. If I were to write a love letter, really, it would be way better than this. You can write it yourself. William Shakespeare, it is not. Although I'm sure the idea of any admirer, especially one that you were not expecting, could come off as startling in a sobering amount of ways, especially one as bold and as open in their affections as this one. If you are afraid of another visage popping in through your window, perhaps I should stay the night to protect you. I don't think it's too unreasonable to assume. Who knows how far this individual might be willing to go this time around? After asserting their presence so swiftly last night, it's unlikely they'll strike if there's somebody at your side, even if it is somebody regrettably like me. At worst, if push came to shove, I could always do something about it. If the individual got a bit more physical. You underestimate me, dear. I'm nobody's cannon fodder. But that's neither here nor there. My point is, you should really think carefully regarding letting me come home with you. After all, the last thing you want to do is pull a trigger like this with your eyes closed. You should really allow me to be there to protect you, if only for your own interests. Surely you can understand that. I am just here to help. No studying, no researching, no indulgences of the scientific variety, just help, if you'll only allow me to give it to you.